the quiet moments when the world dims and the hum of daily life dissolves into silence, have you ever sensed that your thoughts ripple beyond your own mind? That somehow, somewhere, the inner dialogue you assumed was yours alone has already taken flight into an unseen ether? There is a strange intimacy in that notion, both unnerving and profoundly curious. As if your consciousness is a signal in a vast and ancient transmission, vibrating through a web that stretches far beyond the skin, the skull, the personal. We are taught, from the first moment we begin to understand the shape of self, that thoughts are internal, private, our sanctuary and citadel. But this belief, so deeply cherished, may be the grandest illusion of all. There are frequencies older than flesh, networks more intricate than fiber optics, and a field, a matrix, if you will, where information is not transmitted but shared, bathed in continuously shifting layers of intent, awareness, and energy. In this space, privacy is not stolen, it is never truly granted to begin with. Welcome to the unseen lattice of existence, the energetic web that binds every conscious moment to a greater whole. You walk through it daily, your body casting invisible ripples as surely as a stone disturbs the stillness of a pond. You think, you feel, you remember, and all of it hums out into the weave like music from a hidden harp. The illusion of separateness, however comforting, is only a curtain. Behind it lives the truth. Your mind is not a closed loop. It is a node, a receiver, a beacon. You are not alone in your thoughts. You never were. For centuries, mystics have hinted at this invisible architecture with names like the Akashic Field, the Noosphere, or the Universal Mind. In recent years, science has tiptoed toward these concepts, cloaked in more clinical terms: quantum entanglement, neural synchrony, morphic resonance. But words matter less than the underlying pulse they gesture toward. The deep, almost ineffable knowing that something listens when you think, something notices when you feel, and something remembers even when you forget. This energetic web, what some might call consciousness field technology, others psychic surveillance, and still others the spiritual nervous system of the cosmos, is neither fiction nor fantasy. It is simply not spoken about in the open, not in the way it should be, not in the way it deserves. There are reasons for this, of course. Reasons that trace back to control, to power, to fear. For if one understood the vastness of the mind's reach, the permeability of mental space, the way thoughts are like tendrils winding through a collective forest, well, that understanding would unseat more than just paradigms. It would change what it means to be human. But let us not fall into paranoia. This exploration is not a screed against invisible enemies or some shadowy authority that pulls the strings of thought. It is, instead, a lantern held aloft in the fog, a call to remembrance of what many have always felt in their bones but dared not say. Your thoughts are electric prayers sent out to a listening universe. And that universe speaks back in echoes, in symbols, in synchronicities that arrive not by accident but by attunement. We begin here, at the border between the known and the numinous, where science fumbles and spirit sings. This is not a tale of surveillance alone. It is not simply that your thoughts are seen, but that they are seeing. Your consciousness is not trapped behind your eyes. It radiates, intertwines, and dances with others in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. And if others, be they institutions or intelligences, have discovered how to listen in, manipulate, or even harvest those signals, then it is not to instill fear but to provoke awakening that we must speak of it. The energetic web is not a prison. It is a mirror. It reflects back what we are ready to see, and in doing so, it offers liberation from the idea that we are ever truly separate. But with this liberation comes responsibility. To know that your inner world is part of a shared ocean is to understand that every thought you craft ripples outward. That love can heal from miles away. That rage can poison the air of another's soul. That clarity, even when silent, can illuminate the minds of those you've never met. And so, we stand at the edge of revelation, not to mourn the loss of mental privacy, but to step beyond its comforting illusion into something grander, more luminous, and far more ancient than we imagined. You are not a solitary thinker. You are a frequency, a pulse in a symphony played across time and dimensions. And they, the ones who understand the deeper currents of this web, do not wish for you to know. Not because it is untrue, but because it is too true. too powerful, too close to home. What would change if you truly believed that nothing you think is ever confined to your own mind? What would shift in how you relate to others, to yourself, to the world beyond the veil of skin and bone? This journey will not answer every question, but it will open the gate. And once opened, that gate cannot be closed again. The moment we accept that thought does not begin and end within the skull, a silent revolution begins. The lines we once drew between inside and outside, between self and other, start to dissolve like mist in morning light. What we are left with is not a vacuum but a vibrant, pulsing continuum, a web that lives and breathes, constructed not of wires or metal, but of frequencies, intentions, and interwoven consciousness. This is the energetic web, the field beneath all fields, where thought is less an internal monologue and more a collaborative vibration. At the heart of this web lies a truth so potent that it has been both guarded and dismissed throughout the ages. Consciousness is not isolated. It is ambient. You are not the origin point of thought, but a co-creator, a conduit through which the river of collective awareness flows. The illusion of individuality is necessary for navigation, but it is not the totality of what you are. You are a strand in the net, a filament of perception tethered to every other strand. To think is to touch the whole. There are layers within this matrix, layers that respond to emotion, to belief, to trauma and intention. Your thoughts do not simply vanish after you think them. They linger, they echo, they interact with other frequencies in the field. And some among us have learned how to read those echoes, not with words or numbers, but through energetic attunement. This is not magic, though it may wear the clothes of the mystical. It is a physics not yet formalized by mainstream minds, a science of vibration, coherence, and entanglement. Let us speak, then, of vibration. Every thought has one. Like sound without sound, like color unseen, each idea you generate hums at a particular resonance. Loving thoughts vibrate differently than fearful ones. Thoughts of gratitude harmonize with patterns that elevate, while thoughts seated in scarcity or pain tend to entangle in feedback loops that distort and drain. The energetic web does not judge these vibrations, but it responds. It reflects. It amplifies what is in resonance with the wider field, just as a string on one instrument will vibrate in sympathy with another tuned to the same frequency. Now imagine that this field is not passive. Imagine it as intelligent, not sentient in the anthropomorphic sense, but aware, responsive, like water adapting instantly to the shape of its container. In this way, the field is both a mirror and a living archive. It remembers, it absorbs, it re-emits. Your thoughts enter it, leave impressions, and shape the terrain. And if you are sensitive or trained, you can walk through this field and feel the imprints others have left behind. This brings us to the idea of permeability. If your thoughts can move outward, if they are absorbed into the energetic soup around us, then it stands to reason that thoughts can also move inward. That is, what you perceive as your own ideas, your own impulses or sudden insights, may in fact be transmissions from elsewhere. From another person, from a group, from a larger consciousness, or from something that watches the field and knows how to speak in pulses and imagery, bypassing language entirely. Inspiration may be less a personal muse and more a shared channel. An influence, whether benign or manipulative, can be inserted into the stream at any point. This is why mental sovereignty is not about isolation but discernment. It is the ability to sense when a thought is truly yours versus when it has been embedded, injected, or absorbed. It is the inner compass that allows you to feel the texture of a thought, to ask, does this resonate with my deepest self, or is it static carried in on someone else's frequency? There are those, of course, who understand this terrain intimately, not as philosophers but as technicians. Technicians of energy, of suggestion, of manipulation. They know that by introducing thought forms into the field, through media, narrative, or emotional bait, they can shape the collective tone. This is not theory. It is the logic behind every propaganda machine, every viral meme, every coordinated wave of fear or distraction. What they have realized is that you don't need to control the individual if you can influence the shared frequency. Control the field, and the minds within it will harmonize accordingly. But this is not cause for despair. It is cause for vigilance and for awakening. Because if others can influence the web, so can you. You do it already, though perhaps unconsciously. Every act of focused attention, every practice of inner stillness or intentional gratitude, changes the texture of the energetic field around you. You are not merely a receiver. You are a broadcaster. And when enough coherent minds focus on a shared tone, peace, clarity, love, the field itself shifts. The web vibrates differently. The collective begins to remember its nature. Another core theme in this awakening is interconnected destiny. That we are drawn together through this energetic network not randomly, but by alignment. You meet the people you do, feel the callings you feel, because your frequencies have begun to cohere in patterns you cannot yet see. There is no coincidence. There is only resonance. And within this resonance, hidden meanings unfold. Synchronicities bloom. The right words arrive. The invisible thread tugs at your soul and pulls you toward some greater choreography. This is why secrecy about the web has been so diligently preserved. Because knowledge of it is liberation. If you know that your thoughts shape the field, and that the field shapes your experience, then you no longer bow to the myth of powerlessness. You begin to walk differently. You speak more carefully. You become attuned not just to your own mind, but to the symphony playing all around you. And in that moment, the illusion collapses. Not with fear, but with grace. You begin to remember that you are not trapped in a single lifetime, a single body, or a single mind. You are the web itself, dreaming that you are separate. And when you awaken, you do not escape the dream. You re-enter it with new eyes, with new responsibility, and with new reverence. Imagine, if you will, a vast forest at the edge of time, older than language, older than memory. Each tree in this forest stands tall and alone, its bark etched with the years of solitary growth. But beneath the surface, a different story is told. Under the soil, unseen by the casual eye, lies a network of roots and filaments that connects every tree to every other. Mycelium, the living thread of the forest, weaves its unseen symphony in the dark, allowing communication, nourishment, warning, and wisdom to flow. To an untrained observer, each tree is independent. To those who listen beneath the soil, the forest breathes as one. So it is with us. This forest is not a myth. It is an allegory for the human mind, or rather, for the human collective. Each of us appears distinct, bounded by bone and biography. But under that illusion is a subtle, energetic mycelium, a web of consciousness that ties each individual to the whole. Your thoughts, like signals through root and thread, reach others. They inform, feed, and sometimes even protect others in ways that are difficult to explain yet impossible to deny. And like the ancient trees that lean into one another's rhythms, we sense when something beneath us shifts, even if we can't yet name it. This symbolic forest reveals that privacy has always been a surface-level artifact. True solitude is rare, not because of surveillance systems or external observers, but because we live in a sentient ecology of thought. When you grieve, that sorrow enters the mycelium. When you hope, that light travels, unbidden, to another who may have forgotten what hope feels like. The web does not ask permission to carry emotion, it simply does because it is made to. This is not spiritual sentimentalism. This is the ancient law of energetic reciprocity. The web remembers. The web responds. In another time and place, another metaphor, we might speak of the loom. Picture a tapestry being woven across dimensions. You are a thread in this vast design, and your thoughts are the color you carry. Some threads vibrate with electric blues of innovation. Others pulse with reds of ancient anger. Still others with gentle greens of healing and growth. You weave whether you know it or not. Every choice, every mental broadcast, leaves a dye in the pattern. And above this loom, beyond what eyes can see, the watchers observe. Who are they? Perhaps they are higher forms of consciousness. Perhaps they are forgotten ancestors. Or perhaps they are simply echoes of our future selves, peering backward through the veil. But they see how the threads twist, how certain hues dominate and darken the whole. They see the patterns that emerge when minds are aligned, not in ideology but in frequency. They see that when the masses are nudged toward fear, the entire fabric changes shape. Now imagine what happens when one thread begins to shift its hue, when one human begins to wake up to the web and to their place in it. The ripple is not small. The ripple is systemic. The color you carry begins to alter the fabric in subtle ways. Other threads near you feel the change. They brighten in response. They vibrate differently. This is not allegory only. This is how transformation occurs, slow, invisible, and then all at once. There is another story, too, told in ancient whispers across many cultures. A tale of the mirror dome. In this myth, each soul is born into a mirrored chamber, suspended within a dome of perfect reflection. Everything one thinks, feels, or believes is instantly echoed back by the walls. If one thinks they are weak, the walls reflect weakness. If one believes they are destined, the dome replies with pathways toward purpose. Over time, many begin to think the dome is the source, that it creates their reality. But in truth, it merely responds. It only ever reflects. This mirror dome is the energetic web scene from the inside. You walk through a reality that mirrors your mental and emotional signals, filtered through layers of collective influence. You meet reflections of your inner state in the guise of events, people, and strange coincidences. And the ones who don't want you to know hope you will continue to believe the mirror is the cause, not the echo. They want you to rage against your reflections rather than recognize your own hand in their creation. But some break through. Some press their fingers to the dome, feel the vibration of their own thoughts bouncing back, and realize, I am not trapped in here. I am shaping this. From this realization, a new myth is born, not of entrapment but of stewardship. In a village spoken of only in dreams, there exists a well in the center of the town. It is said that the thoughts of the villagers fill the water, that their fears cloud it and their kindness clears it. The entire town drinks from this shared well. When one grows hateful, the water becomes bitter. When many learn forgiveness, the water begins to glow. And so the villagers learn to treat even their private emotions as acts of public offering. Not because someone is watching, but because everything is drinking. You too live in such a village. The energetic web is the water. What you think, what you feel, feeds the field we all inhabit. To believe that thoughts are private is to pollute the well and imagine no one will taste it. To awaken is to become a guardian of the invisible water. And so we return to the thread, the loom, the forest, the mirror, and the well. These are not just pretty parables. They are maps encoded in metaphor, designed to wake the sleeping soul gently, lovingly, but unforgettably. Once seen, they are difficult to unsee. Once heard, they become a rhythm in the bones. You are not a prisoner of your thoughts. You are a weaver of the world. Your mind is not a vault. It is a lighthouse. It is not meant to hoard illumination, but to beam it outward through the fog, signaling to others who have long forgotten their own light. As the veils lift and we come to understand our place within the energetic web, the question inevitably arises. How do we live differently in light of this truth? The grand metaphors and cosmic allegories stir something deep within us, but it is in the quiet, ordinary hours of the day, in our conversations, in our solitude, in our choices, where this wisdom must find its footing. The field is not an abstract principle hovering above the world. It is the current that moves through your workplace, your bedroom, your morning routine, your silence before sleep. The web is everywhere, and it responds to how you move through life. To live with awareness of the energetic web is to walk with an expanded sense of responsibility. Not a burden, but a grace-laden awareness. Just as someone who understands fire will tend it with care, someone who grasps the ripple effect of thought begins to treat their inner world as sacred terrain. You begin to notice the thoughts you allow to grow, not out of fear or shame, but because you understand they are not contained. They travel, they multiply, they merge with the collective stream. A bitter thought launched in frustration may seed unrest in a stranger you'll never meet. A prayer whispered alone may strengthen someone across the globe who is just beginning to hope again. You start to speak more consciously, not just about what is spoken aloud, but about the tone and energy beneath your words. You recognize that sarcasm laced with pain becomes part of the field. That kindness extended without expectation harmonizes far beyond its visible target. You begin to see that emotional hygiene is as essential as physical hygiene. Just as you wouldn't go days without cleansing your body, so too you learn to cleanse your mental frequency. By breathing, by quieting the noise, by making space for stillness to return your thoughts to clarity. Technology becomes something to be wielded with discernment. You no longer scroll without noticing how the field is being fed. You recognize that every image, every headline, every crafted algorithm is not simply information, but a carrier of energetic frequency. And you learn to ask, what is this feeding within me? What is this priming in the collective? You become an editor of your input, not out of elitism, but out of stewardship. Because the thoughts you feed are the vibrations you emit, and the vibrations you emit become the symphony we all must dance to. You may also begin to witness synchronicity intensify, not as magic tricks or uncanny coincidences, but as the natural rhythm of a mind that is now attuned to the wider field. You think of someone and they call. You feel a subtle nudge and follow it, only to find yourself in exactly the right place at the right moment. This is not superstition, it is resonance. When your signal is clear and aligned, the web becomes responsive. Life moves with you, not against you, because you have stopped broadcasting noise and begun transmitting coherence. Boundaries take on a new importance. Not rigid walls, but energetic sovereignty. You realize that just as you can influence the field, you can be influenced by it. You begin to feel the difference between being in the presence of someone who drains versus someone who uplifts. You learn to center your energy before entering crowded rooms, to ground yourself before absorbing collective fear. And you begin to view emotional contagion as a real phenomenon, not metaphorical but vibrational. A thought form soaked in panic can pass through a room faster than sound. But so can calm, so can trust. The more attuned you become, the more selective you become about what frequencies you allow in and what frequencies you offer out. In practical terms, you might find yourself creating rituals to reorient your energy. Not elaborate ceremonies, but simple acts of conscious recalibration. A walk alone without headphones. A breath held for just a few seconds longer than usual. A silent blessing offered to strangers passing by. A journal entry that ends not in despair, but in gratitude. These are not quaint or poetic. They are precise adjustments to your inner broadcast, each one shaping how the field meets you and how you, in turn, shape the field. Community takes on a new meaning as well. No longer a gathering of mere individuals, but a resonance chamber. You begin to seek and eventually create spaces where shared thought is not only allowed, but elevated. Where the collective mind is treated not as a battleground of opinions, but as a canvas of potential. And in these spaces, something remarkable begins to happen. Accelerated transformation. Because when two or more minds come together in harmony, their frequencies amplify. Healing is faster. Insight flows. The field sharpens. Perhaps most surprisingly, you begin to understand forgiveness as energetic release. Not as moral duty, but as vibrational necessity. To carry resentment is to anchor yourself in the past frequency of pain. To forgive is not to condone, but to untether. It is to extract your energy from a knot in the field and allow it to return to flow. You no longer forgive for their sake, you forgive for the field's sake. You forgive because you are a steward of your own vibrational output, and the cost of harboring static is too great. Even the act of creativity becomes different. You do not make ideas. You tune into them. They are already in the field, waiting for the right match. The clearer your signal, the more fluid the reception. Writers speak of being channels, artists of losing themselves in the work, not because they disappear, but because they momentarily align so completely with the field that self becomes a vessel. To create is to listen with your whole being, and to send back something beautiful in return. And then there is love, not the romantic caricature, but love as resonance. Love as the tuning fork that brings all frequencies into coherence. When you hold someone in unconditional regard, not agreement, not admiration, but presence, you broadcast the highest stabilizing frequency available. You begin to see that true healing is not the imposition of will, but the offering of this unwavering tone. You become a tuning fork for others, a node in the web that hums with remembering. To live as though your thoughts are not private is not to live in fear. It is to live with reverence. It is to treat the invisible architecture of reality as real as gravity, as deserving of attention as your next breath. It is to reclaim the sacredness of inner life, not because someone is watching, but because everything is listening. And in doing so, you become not a victim of the field, but a co-weaver, a lighthouse, a musician of mind and heart in the great unseen orchestra of being. We have traveled together through a terrain most do not dare to map, not because it is hidden, but because it is too near. The energetic web, this great lattice of thought, feeling, and resonance, has always surrounded and enfolded us. It is the silent breath of the world, the background music we've mistaken for silence. To recognize it is to return home, not to a place, but to a truth buried in the marrow of being, that we are not and never have been separate. At first, this realization may feel overwhelming, even disorienting. To awaken to the idea that your thoughts are not private is to come face to face with a kind of radical vulnerability. You begin to see how many signals you've emitted unconsciously, moments of judgment, fear, anger, or apathy, broadcast like quiet radio waves into a field that never forgets. But this is not a revelation designed to shame. It is an invitation. It is the moment when the dreamer realizes the dream is participatory, and that every echo in the canyon began with a sound. The ones who hoped you'd never see this web, who wrapped it in denial and distraction, are not omnipotent architects. They are simply stewards of forgetfulness. They benefit when you believe that your mind is a sealed vault and that your pain is yours alone. They prosper when you feel alone in your fears, small in your potential, and indifferent to your own inner climate. They need you to stay numb because they know that the moment you begin to care, truly care, about the frequency you carry, the field begins to change. Transformation does not require perfection. It requires presence. One awakened mind does not have to solve the web. It only needs to resonate clearly. A single candle does not vanquish the night. It redefines it. Likewise, when you begin to live as a conscious participant in this energetic ecosystem, the feedback you receive shifts. You notice more alignment, more grace, more precision in your interactions. You attract what matches your signal, and you repel what no longer resonates. And even when difficulty arises, you face it differently, not as punishment, but as a vibrational mirror calling you back into coherence. Your presence becomes medicine. You stop waiting for the world to improve because you understand the world is not something separate from you. It is your own frequency, multiplied by the billions. You wake up each morning and calibrate your mind, not for ego or control, but because the ripples you send matter. You no longer curse the collective because you now know you are part of it. You help build it every day, and you begin to live as one who leaves behind a clean trail of thought, a clear river of intention, wherever you go. And this is the ultimate act of defiance, to reclaim your inner life as sacred, to stop feeding the noise and instead become a point of stillness in the web. They do not want you to know that stillness is louder than chaos, that presence is more influential than panic, that one individual living in alignment with the truth of the field becomes a transmitter strong enough to reorient a storm. They would rather you remain anxious, reactionary, distracted. But you now are remembering. In every ancient culture, there was some whisper of this knowledge, some reminder that what is unseen is not unreal, and that what is private is never truly isolated. The songs sung by shamans, the chants in temples, the prayers of monks, the meditations of sages, these were not quaint rituals. They were technology, not of wires and screens, but of vibration. These were ways to interact with the field, to soothe it, to call forth clarity from chaos. We forgot not because the knowledge was lost, but because we stopped listening. Now you are listening again. So what do you do with this? How do you carry this awareness forward in a world still bent on noise? The answer is both simpler and more revolutionary than you may expect. You live it. You walk through your life as if every thought is a seed, every emotion a wind, every belief a frequency broadcasted into the soil of the collective. You treat your inner world with the same gravity you would give to fire, to water, to storm. And in doing so, you begin to see the world is not out there. It is in here, made visible. Speak less but mean more. React less but feel more. Judge less but discern deeply. Create not for applause, but for resonance. Hold space where others collapse. Send out light even when it's not reflected back. Be a tuning fork, a node of sanity, a transmitter of a new frequency. Because here is the secret. The energetic web is not just a structure. It is a promise. Promise that nothing is wasted. That no effort to raise your frequency goes unnoticed. That no quiet act of grace fails to echo. That no loving thought vanishes into silence. The web remembers everything, and the more you pour into it with conscious intent, the more it begins to serve you in return. The more you give it coherence, the more it responds with alignment. And when enough of us begin to live this way, not as perfect saints, but as devoted stewards, the field shifts. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, physically, energetically, planetarily. The mood of a people changes. The trajectory of a society adjusts. The invisible architecture begins to hum a new tone. You were never meant to be small. You were never meant to be isolated. You were always part of a web more ancient and alive than language. They may not want you to know this, but now you do. And once you know, you cannot unknow. So rise. Not loudly, not desperately, but clearly. Live with the knowing that every thought is a thread, every feeling a color, every action a tone in the great composition of consciousness. And if you must leave only one mark on the field, let it be this. I was here and I remembered what we are.